When you say Bobby on the beat, it's interesting what people mean by that. Do you see coppers sometimes walking in the street? Yes, you do. If you were to leave, I mean, I know we're in central London and all the rest of it, and if you live yourself in a big city, whether you're in Edinburgh, Plymouth, wherever it happens to be, what you will in the city centre invariably see some cops on the beat, as it were. But generally, walking around your housing estate, that's a kind of different thing. My mum always used to talk about the local cop, and everyone knew his name. He had a nickname, Pringle or something. I can't remember what it was. Oh, Pringles is coming, don't want to get into trouble. Otherwise, Pringles will come and sort you out good and something like that. My mum lived in an Enid Blyton novel, it seems. But nonetheless, that was the name of the game back then, community policing. If anyone did anything wrong, you knew there was a cop not far away. I don't know how many you'd need to make it kind of effective, as it were, because one copper on one side of the estate is going to do very little for an incident going on the other side of the estate. Is it cops per square meterage? How are they going to measure this thing? We are told police sources will have dedicated teams of officers focused on town centres at peak times. This is England and Wales at the moment. Scotland, apparently, Northern Ireland are sorting things separately. This is the Prime Minister. Keir Starmer says he wants to end the policing postcode lottery. They love that phrase, don't they? It's a postcode lottery. They want to end this by ensuring that every community had specialist neighbourhood officers. The government is aiming to put named local officers into each neighbourhood and boost police ranks by 13,000. Now, for police ranks, that could mean special constables, so essentially those that volunteer into the police. It could be community support officers. In the announcement, Keir Starmer says visible policing has fallen dramatically in recent years, with 90% of crime left unsolved. He says shoplifting and antisocial behaviour have wreaked havoc on our neighbourhoods, and argues that the government plans will put prevention at the heart of policing. I'm not really buying into this, the idea that you are going to somehow solve the shoplifting crisis because there's a copper a mile away walking the streets in some part of the town centre, which would possibly not even be a walk away. It might be a bus or a car ride away. You'd have to have an awful lot of cops to make the tangible difference. Last year, the National Police Chief Council said forces faced an estimated gap of 1.3 billion in overall finances over the next 2 years. And in January, the Home Office announced an extra 100 neighbourhood policing. What to you does neighbourhood policing mean? Have you ever been? I'm genuinely interested in this. I don't ask this, and this, by the way, this is never the fault of the individual cop. The individual officer is merely put on a shift and told that you will be patrolling that area, whether you're on foot or whether you're in a car. I mean, there are places where the police are on foot. I think you're more likely to see it in bigger cities. What about your neck of the woods? Do you see a police officer patrolling your estate? Because I don't think this plan quite drills down that deeply to the point where you'll look at, if you take the average housing estate, and I'm looking at this through the lens of my own experience, but I think many of you will recognise this, where you've got a load of houses, it's given a name, that estate, there's a community centre, there's a row of shops opposite the community centre, there's, for some bizarre reason, this is 1970s building for you, a concrete play park. I'm sure they've all gone now, which invariably involved a kind of train made out of concrete piping and a maze made out of I mean, this must have breached every health and safety issue in the land. But that's sort of what estates used to look like. And then there'd be the shops, there'd be a newsagent, a greengrocer's, there was a chemist, we had a wool shop, we had a co-op, and we had a laundrette at the end. I think there was one other Ron's Barbers. I forgot Ron's Barbers. How could anybody forget Ron's Barbers? Man alive. Yeah, so that's what it looked like. It was a strip of shops. And much of that is actually still there. And there was a doctor's surgery just behind the community centre. That's how it kind of worked. And then once in a while, you might see a police officer, but not really in my time. I mean, this disappeared like in the late 60s, really. Police on the beat. literally walking the streets of your neighbourhood. Do you see that? And have you ever utilised the services of the copper on the street? You know, you've ran out of a situation and gone, I'm just going to go and find Pringles, the copper, and away you go. And you know he's been down that road. He's not down. He was last seen down. Oh, be on the main road. Pringles, there's some jip going on outside the laundrette, and along he comes like a superhero with his truncheon of justice to sort the whole thing out. And then he radios to his mates and the cars turn up and they arrest the bad person and they take away the laundrette thief. Never try and steal a tin drummed spin dryer. You can't do that on your own. Whatever it is that have you encountered that? Because that's apparently what so the spirit of this is that's what they're trying to replace. And I don't know how effective that would literally be. More coppers, yeah. But I'm not necessarily sure that the focus just on community policing in that sense is necessarily the answer to reducing crime, which is why we're asking, will more Bobbies on the beat make a difference to crime? I wonder whether crime is largely solved. You want more officers to be able to turn up if somebody calls them, but specifically being on the beat, I'm failing to see how a copper in one postcode, and bearing in mind this community policing thing will probably stretch across, you know, lots of different postcodes. So how's he going to get from A to B if there's hassle going on in one estate, but he's walking the beat on another one? You'd still have to call the cops, right? I don't think that would make much difference. And everyone's going to know their name. All right, Shaz, the copper, are they going to be on their own, walking the... I'm struggling. 034. We're going to get Peter Blexley in a moment. If anybody knew the pitfalls or the potential in plans like this, it's Peter, a cop of many years' experience. Very tell it like it is. He'll join us shortly. 0344 499 1000. Your experience, please, of police officers on the beat, literally seeing them in the street. If you're in the city centre somewhere, whenever I go to Manchester, if I walk out of the Piccadilly station, I will invariably see a copper within a couple of minutes. If I walk around Trafalgar Square in London, I will see a copper at some point. If I'm walking in the centre of Edinburgh, at some point I will see a copper. But beyond those areas, in my own estate, where I live now, I don't think I've ever seen a police officer walking down the street since I've lived there. It was about 12 years, ever. 034, I sometimes see one going into Tesco because they've nabbed a shoplifter, but that's about it. 0344 499 1000. And will more cops on the beat make a difference to crime? Our lines are open. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Harrison Allman-Varty is back with us, the political commentator. Harrison, good afternoon to you.
Hello. Well, yeah, from Abu Dhabi. Look at the devotion, Ian.
You're in Abu Dhabi, are you?
I know, hence the... Well, I was hoping you were going to mention something about me being darker, but I thought I'll be waiting all day for that, wouldn't I? So,
well, I did notice you, like, coiffuring the old high barnet there for a second and making sure you look decent. I've been to Abu Dhabi, actually. I mean, not a lot happens in Abu Dhabi, is my takeaway. What's yours?
Yeah, we normally go to Dubai, but we thought all our holidays are kind of merging into one, so we thought we'd shake up a bit, go to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's a sleepier version of Dubai. It's not much goes on here, to be honest.
Well, when we went there, I said to my other half, it's a bit like going to Canary Wharf for your holiday.
Yeah, very clean, very safe. But
it's all of that. Yeah, it's got all of that going on.
But then again, we're the type of people that just literally don't leave the resort. We'll go from beach to room to restaurant to beach to room to restaurant, and
that's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that at all. No one should ever have to apologise.
Show, obviously.
Yeah, indeed. Nobody should ever have to apologise for doing just beach to room, room to beach, or pool or whatever. When people go, oh, the last thing I want to do is sit around a pool all day, you know, I think, no, that's the first thing I want to do is sit around a pool all day. It's fantastic. Well, listen, let's start with this story then. Keir Starmer saying that the police must ensure extra patrols at peak times or risk losing government funding. I think this is sort of trying to do a nod to Trump there, isn't there? You won't get any funding, you know, because we are the federal government. Let's listen to Yvette Cooper speaking on the BBC earlier today.
We'll set out later today the increased number of officers and PCSOs in this coming year as a result of the £200 million additional funding that we've given police forces for neighbourhood policing. And it's part of a neighbourhood policing guarantee, so it means you'll get a named contactable officer in your area. It means increased neighbourhood patrols, particularly in areas like town centres where we know we've had problems with shop theft, street crime and so on. And it's about reversing the decimation of neighbourhood policing that we've seen across the country.
Yeah, I'm sure she was about to say over the last 14 years. It predates the last 14 years. I mean, I don't think I've ever experienced neighbourhood policing, not in the way my nan would have told the story. But I can only see, it sounds like something bigger than I imagine this is going to be, Harrison.
I mean, I don't really think it's a news story, to be honest. I think it's just default. I think it's something that should just be expected. I mean, you have police. Why wasn't this the case already? Like, why is this a new story in that sense? Like, I'd be quite interested to see how they actually do this, whether they do it of population or geography. Because, like, for example, when we see within elections, the way they do boundaries is purely of population, which is why sometimes they make no sense. You'll get the name of a town miles away, but that's the name of the constituency.
Yeah.
So it'd be quite interesting to see how they map this out, whether it's done on how many people are in the area or just because it's a town, because you might get some quite large towns, and if you've got one officer or two officers compared to maybe a little village. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think it's a particularly exciting news story. I think most people will probably look at this and think, oh right, well, is this supposed to be a good thing? It was kind of something that I expected anyway.
Yes, I mean, you might imagine that this should already be the default situation, regardless, but it's clearly not. But the idea that one copper in one part of town is going to be some kind of omnipresent superhero who can deal with the whole thing. And we had this from Matt in Newcastle, who says, police officers on the beat in all areas. Really? Some police forces don't go into some areas, even in cars with a posse of officers. One officer on the beat in a no-go area is laughable. And he's quite right. I was in, not a million miles, in Darlington week before last, and I was talking to a couple of coppers there. And they were telling me as we were driving from the station to the venue that I was working at, they said, oh, you know, we never went anywhere near that area down there because it was too dangerous. And it's like, wow.
Brilliant.
So, you know, one man or woman on his own is not going to do that, are they?
No, I mean, for me, do you know what I'd quite like to see? I'd quite like to see the threshold and requirements of what it takes to be a police officer increased. Because sometimes you see an officer walking around, you know, male or female, they might be, you know, I'm not a particularly tall person, but I'd quite like a tall person to come and, you know, and save me if I needed to. And I need someone who is, you know, to a certain fitness standard kind of thing. So I think that is quite an important thing. Sometimes you see people who are, you know, quite short, quite overweight, unhealthy. You think, well, if it really push came to shove, could this person actually help me, or am I kind of best off kind of doing this on my own kind of thing? I don't know. I think requirements for police does need to increase instead of trying to just push for numbers and push for location. I'd quite like to see, instead of quantity, more quality of officers, to be honest, because I've seen quite a few, I don't know about you, where you think, no way, I would not trust them in a situation. If it was a case where I needed someone right here, right now, they've got a knife or they're a huge person that's about to, you know, disrupt, I need, you know, 6'6" police officers who are absolute jacked, who I know if things really, really go, then they can step in and you know, I feel reassured by that. So,
and what are you going to do? You know, if a shop down the way is, you know, there's a shoplifter in there, I mean, you can already call the police. They may not show up, which is what we've had so often, not because of the individual coppers didn't fancy turning up, but there was no one to turn up sometimes. I don't imagine that one named officer, the fact that we all know, oh, old Charlie the copper is out tonight, yeah, but he might not be near Smith's or wherever's getting robbed at the same time. So
it depends what they're even responding to. I mean, it's like you might have someone who will call up and go, oh my, help me, there's someone in my house and he's got a knife. And then you might have someone go, someone just said I'm fat on Twitter. So it's like, what happens then? Because you would assume they'd go to the more serious threat. But then again, Ask your viewers, where do you think they'll go? They'll probably go for the easy option, don't you think? I mean, that's what we've seen anyway. All these clips online of people knocking on doors or saying some unsavory things on Twitter. It's like, oh yeah, but when I needed you when I was getting burgled, you told me you'd be here the next day. What?
Yeah, it's all a bit upside down. I'm not sure this is the greatest, as you rightly said at the beginning, Harrison, I'm not sure this is the greatest announcement out there today, but that is the one that the government are running with. They say 13,000, they don't, by the way, say 13,000 new police officers, just new officers. So that could be community support officers who are, you know, incredibly valuable as a backup to police, but it could also mean special constables who are essentially volunteers in the police, and you can't always rely on when somebody can put a shift in on that. So there's difficulties clearly with this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll watch with interest how it pans out. We're asking that question: will more Bobbies on the beat make a difference to crime? I very much doubt it. I think you've got to look elsewhere if you want to find the sort of deeper answers to that. Whether that's about punishment, whether it's about something else, you tell me.